The sound of his palm connecting with my cheek echoed through the suddenly silent room. 99 guests froze, champagne glasses suspended mid-toast, as I staggered backward from the force of my father's slap. My 35th birthday celebration transformed into a nightmare in seconds. But what cut deeper than the physical blow was what happened next. My sister Heather jumped to her feet, actually clapping and cheering as she shouted, "Finally! Give us the house! You've no kids!" My own mother laughed and added, "You're just a barren waste." Their words hung in the air as tears stung my eyes. They had planned this public humiliation because I had inherited my grandmother's Victorian house. What they didn't know was that one quiet call would change everything. Grandma Elise was more mother to me than my own. While my parents built their architecture firm and doted on my sister Heather, Grandma welcomed me into her beautiful Victorian home in Brookfield. The house, with its wraparound porch and stained glass windows, became my sanctuary from age 7. My bedroom had a window seat where I'd read for hours while Grandma baked downstairs. The scent of cinnamon and love filled every corner of that house. "Annika," she would say, "a house isn't about the walls or the roof. It's about the memories we create inside it. We created thousands together." She taught me to garden in the backyard, to repair the creaky third step on the staircase, to appreciate the history in the crown molding that her grandfather had installed by hand. My parents and Heather visited occasionally, but they preferred their modern downtown condo. Heather would roll her eyes at the old dusty place, while my parents discussed how much it would sell for on today's market. Grandma would just smile and squeeze my hand under the table. When Grandma was diagnosed with cancer, I moved in permanently to care for her. I was 32 then, working as an event planner, able to handle many clients remotely. Those final months were painful, but precious. We talked about everything except who would inherit the house. I assumed it would be divided among family. The reading of the will left everyone stunned. To my granddaughter Annika, who filled my home with love when others saw only real estate, I leave my entire property and home at 427 Maple Street, valued at approximately $1,200,000. My father's face turned crimson. My mother's lips pressed into a thin white line. Heather stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames in the attorney's office. "She can't even have children," Heather had shouted before leaving. "What's the point of her having a family home?" That cut deep. At 25, I'd been in a car accident that left me with extensive internal injuries. The doctors explained gently that having biological children would be nearly impossible. My family knew this but treated my infertility as a personal failure rather than a painful loss. Despite the tension, I hoped time would heal the wounds. Heather married Trent soon after college, and they quickly had 3 children, twin boys, now 8 and a 6-year-old daughter. Despite Trent's job in sales, they struggled financially. They lived in a modest 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of town, and Heather never missed an opportunity to mention how cramped they were. For my 35th birthday, I decided to host a celebration at Grandma's my house. I invited colleagues from the event planning agency, friends from my support group for women with infertility, neighbors, and after hesitation, my immediate family. Perhaps opening my home would show them I was honoring Grandma's legacy, not just sitting on valuable real estate. I spent weeks planning the perfect party. As an event planner, I wanted everything to be beautiful and meaningful. I hired caterers, arranged flowers from Grandma's garden throughout the house, and even created a small memorial table with her photo and favorite books. The day before the party, as I was confirming final details with the catering company, my phone buzzed with a text from Heather. "Hope you're ready for tomorrow. I know things about you that your fancy work friends would love to hear. Maybe we should talk about that house situation before things get messy." I stared at my phone, my hands suddenly cold. What was she planning? What things could she possibly know? The threat lingered as I tried to focus on the celebration ahead, a dark cloud over what should have been a joyful occasion. The evening began perfectly. Early May in Wisconsin meant the gardens were blooming, and the weather allowed for both indoor and outdoor mingling. Strings of soft lights illuminated the patio, and servers circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. My boss Diane arrived with a large gift basket. "This place is magnificent, Annika. No wonder you fought to keep it in the family." I hadn't fought for anything, but I smiled and thanked her. My colleagues from Perfect Day Event Planning filled one corner of the garden, while my infertility support group friends gathered near the fountain. Taylor, my best friend since college, handled the music playlist and kept checking on me. "You doing okay?" she asked, surveying the growing crowd. "That's got to be almost 100 people." 99 RSVPs, I confirmed. "I'm fine, just nervous about my family." As if summoned by our conversation, my parents walked through the garden gate. My father, William, tall and distinguished with silver-streaked hair, wore his standard charcoal suit. My mother, Patricia, slim and elegant at 63, surveyed the gathering with a critical eye. "Annika," she air-kissed near both my cheeks. "Quite the production you've put on." "Thanks, Mom. I'm glad you both could come." My father handed me an envelope. "Happy birthday, honey." The endearment sounded forced. Heather and Trent arrived 30 minutes later, with no kids in tow. Heather wore a dress that seemed too formal for the garden party setting, her blonde hair pulled into a tight updo. Trent looked uncomfortable in a suit that seemed slightly too small. "Happy birthday, sis." Heather's hug was enthusiastic and lingering. "This party must have cost a fortune. Good thing you have all this inheritance money to throw around." I pulled back, maintaining my smile. "It's nice to use the house the way Grandma loved to, bringing people together." Sure, she replied, her eyes scanning the property assessingly. "Hey, will you show Trent that antique desk in the study? He's been wanting to see it." The request seemed odd, but I led them through the house, noting Heather whispering to our parents as we passed. By 7:30, dinner was served on the long tables set up on the lawn. Candlelight flickered across 99 faces as servers brought out the first course. I took my seat at the head table, with my parents, Heather and Trent, positioned prominently nearby. As the main course was being cleared, my father stood unexpectedly, tapping his glass with a spoon. The garden quieted. "I'd like to propose a toast to my daughter Annika on her 35th birthday." His voice carried clearly in the night air. 35 is a significant age. In many ways, it marks a transition into true adulthood and responsibility. I shifted uncomfortably. This didn't sound like the start of a warm birthday toast. "Family legacy is important to us Thompsons," he continued. "Passing down what we've built to the next generation, ensuring our values and our properties go to those who will extend the family line." Confused murmurs rippled through the guests. My colleagues exchanged glances. My mother, Annika's grandmother, had very traditional values about family, about children carrying on the family name and inhabiting family spaces. I felt heat rising to my face. What was he doing? Yet somehow, in a moment of confusion or manipulation, her most valuable asset went to the one family member who cannot fulfill that most basic family function. Gasps from several tables. Taylor half rose from her seat, but I subtly motioned for her to sit. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "maybe we could discuss family matters privately? This is supposed to be a celebration." His face darkened. "A celebration of what? Your selfishness? Your theft? Of what should rightfully belong to Heather's children?" Complete silence fell over the party. I stood slowly. I didn't steal anything. Grandma made her choice. I loved her and cared for her when. "When what?" he snapped. "When we were busy working to support this family? When we were raising 2 daughters? Not just focusing on the one who cozied up to a wealthy old woman? That's not fair," I said, my voice breaking. "I loved her. This isn't about money." "Everything is about money." His fist came down on the table, making the glasses jump. $1,200,000 that should be supporting your sister's children is being wasted on you, playing house all alone. "Please stop," I whispered. aware of 99 pairs of eyes watching this family implosion. No, you stop pretending you deserve this place. You manipulated my mother when she was vulnerable. You turned her against her own son. You think I don't know why she left everything to you? You poisoned her against us. That's not true, I cried. That's when it happened. 3 quick strides and he was beside me, his open palm connecting with my cheek in a slap that knocked me sideways. The sound seemed to echo across the garden as several guests stood in alarm. But before anyone could react, Heather jumped to her feet, actually clapping her hands together and cheering. Finally, she shouted. Someone said it. Give us the house, Annika. You've no kids. You'll never have kids. This is a family home for families. My mother stood next to her. You're just a barren waste of the inheritance. What would your grandmother say if she knew you were keeping this house from her great-grandchildren? I touched my stinging cheek in shock, looking from my father to my sister to my mother. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. They had planned this public humiliation carefully. 99 guests sat in horrified silence as my family showed their true colors under the soft garden lights that suddenly seemed too bright, too exposing. My carefully planned birthday celebration had become the stage for their ugliest feelings about me, and they were performing for an audience. The party disintegrated quickly after that. Guests mumbled awkward goodbyes, avoiding eye contact. My boss, Diane, touched my arm gently. Take some time off, Annika. We'll talk next week. The pity in her eyes was almost worse than my family's cruelty. My parents and Heather didn't leave. Instead, they followed me inside as the catering staff hurriedly packed up, eager to escape the tension. You got what you wanted, I said, my voice hollow. You've humiliated me in front of everyone I know. Are you satisfied now? This isn't about humiliation, my father said coldly. It's about justice. That house should be providing for Heather's children's future, not sitting empty except for you. Empty? I live here. This is my home. It's too much house for one person, my mother chimed in, especially one who will never fill it with children. The casual cruelty of that statement stole my breath. Taylor, who had stayed behind, stepped between us. I think you should leave, she told my family firmly. You've done enough damage for one night. This isn't over, Heather warned as Trent pulled her toward the door. That house belongs with us, and you know it. After they left, I collapsed onto Grandma's old sofa, the one she refused to replace because it knows all our secrets. Taylor sat beside me, holding my hand as I stared numbly at the wall. I knew they resented me inheriting the house, I whispered. But I never thought they'd do something like this. Your dad hit you, Annika. That's assault. You could press charges. I shook my head. And drag this ugliness into court? Give them another public forum to call me barren and selfish? The next morning I woke to find several missed calls from unknown numbers. When I checked my email, I discovered why. Heather had posted on her social media accounts. Sad to see how money changes people. My sister manipulated our dying grandmother to steal $1 million inheritance from her own family. Now 3 children will grow up without their birthright, because a childless woman wants to rattle around in a house that should be filled with the next generation. She had tagged several of my clients. Comments expressed shock and sympathy for Heather. By Monday, the whispers at work were unmistakable. 2 clients called to postpone their consultations. Diane called me into her office. Annika, your personal life is your business, she began carefully. But when it affects client relationships, they're believing Heather's lies, I said flatly. People love family drama. And frankly, several of our corporate clients are family-oriented businesses, the idea that you might have taken advantage of an elderly relative. It doesn't sit well. That's not what happened. I believe you, she said, not sounding entirely convinced. But perception matters in our business. Take 2 weeks, paid leave. Sort this out. At home, more problems awaited. A neighbor stopped me as I collected the mail. Is it true you're selling to developers? Your father mentioned they're planning to demolish and build condos. What? No. Who told you that? Your dad was talking to several neighbors yesterday. Said we should prepare for construction noise next year. My phone rang constantly with relatives I barely knew, all suddenly concerned about family heritage and doing right by Elise's memory. Each conversation ended with suggestions that I sign over the house to Heather's children. The final straw came 3 days after the party disaster. I invited my parents to dinner, thinking a calm, private conversation might help them understand my perspective. They arrived with a man they introduced as Gerald Stevens, their attorney. "We're prepared to be reasonable," my father said, as we sat at Grandma's dining table, the same one where she had taught me to play cards and do my homework. Gerald slid a document across to me. "This is a straightforward transfer of property. You sign, and the house goes into a trust for Heather's children. You'll be permitted to live here for 6 months while you find alternative accommodation." I stared at them. "You brought a lawyer to dinner? You actually think I'm going to sign over my home?" "Be sensible, Annika," my mother said. "This situation is damaging the whole family. Your reputation is suffering. Is a house worth all that?" "This isn't just a house," I said, pushing back the document. "This was Grandma's home, and now it's mine. She wanted me to have it." "She wasn't thinking clearly toward the end," my father countered. "The cancer medications." "Stop," I interrupted, a terrible suspicion forming. "Were you planning this even before she died? Trying to claim she wasn't competent?" Their silence was answer enough. I stood up. "Please leave, and take your lawyer with you." After they left, I sat alone in Grandma's my kitchen, truly seeing for the first time how calculated their behavior had been. This wasn't just about the house. It was about money, control, and a fundamental belief that my life was worth less because I couldn't have children. For the first time since the inheritance, I wondered if keeping the house was worth the pain. Maybe I should sell it, give them some portion to silence them, and move somewhere they couldn't find me. The thought of surrendering felt like betraying Grandma, but I was so tired of fighting. That night, I cried myself to sleep in the bedroom where I had stayed as a child, feeling more alone than I had even in the days after Grandma's funeral. The house that had always been my sanctuary now felt like the center of a storm trying to destroy me. A week after the disastrous dinner with my parents and their lawyer, I decided to clean Grandma's study. It had remained largely untouched since her death. I'd been using the smaller office off the kitchen for my work. The study, with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and large oak desk, had always felt like the heart of her private world. Dusting the shelves, I found her collection of mystery novels, meticulously organized by author. She had loved puzzles of all kinds, books, crosswords, jigsaw puzzles. We would complete together on rainy afternoons. "Life gives us puzzles all the time, Annika," she would say. "The trick is finding all the pieces before trying to solve them." The memory gave me a pang of grief and longing. I moved to her desk, opening drawers and sorting through papers. Tax documents, utility bills, gardening catalogs, all neatly labeled and filed. Grandma's organizational skills had been legendary in the family. In the bottom right drawer, I found a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. Inside, in her distinctive handwriting, were dated entries going back 15 years. I hesitated, feeling like an intruder, but my eyes caught my father's name on a page from 8 years ago. "William asked for another loan today. That makes $40,000 in the past 2 years. Like the others, he says it's temporary, just until the business stabilizes." I haven't told him I know about the vacation home they purchased in Florida. Annika doesn't know either. I wonder if Patricia realizes I'm aware of her shopping habits. The credit card statements William accidentally left here tell quite a story. I flipped through more pages, my hands shaking. Heather visited with the twins. Beautiful boys, but she spent the entire visit dropping hints about needing a larger house. When I suggested they might live within their means, she actually said, "Well, we can't all inherit houses, can we?" I worry about her materialism. The children seem to have everything except parental attention. Another entry, from 6 years ago. Trent called asking for $15,000. Said not to tell Heather. Gambling again, I suspect. I refused. He became unpleasant, suggesting I'm playing favorites with my money. William called an hour later making the same request, pretending it was for Heather's business idea. They're coordinating now, it seems. Entry after entry documented loans never repaid, thinly veiled demands, and increasing pressure. And then, from just months before her diagnosis, William suggested today that at my age, I should consider simplifying by selling the house and moving to a retirement community. When I declined, he mentioned elder law attorneys who could help with managing my affairs. The implication was clear enough. They see me as an obstacle to their plans for my property. Little do they know I've already made arrangements with Jackson. Who was Jackson? I'd never heard Grandma mention him. As I turned to the final pages, a sealed envelope fell out, addressed to me in Grandma's handwriting. For Annika, in case of family dispute after I'm gone. I carefully opened it, finding several documents and a handwritten letter. My dearest Annika, if you're reading this, then my fears have come to pass, and the family is giving you trouble about the house. I hoped they would respect my wishes, but I've prepared for the possibility they won't. William and Patricia have been trying to access my assets for years. The journal contains the details. What you don't know is that 6 months before my diagnosis, they consulted an attorney about having me declared mentally incompetent. My friend Beth at the bank alerted me when they inquired about my accounts, claiming concern about my confused state. I wasn't confused. I was perfectly aware of their financial difficulties. Difficulties they've hidden from you. Despite appearances, they remortgaged their condo 3 years ago. Heather and Trent have significant debt, largely due to his gambling. They've seen my house as their financial salvation for years. Enclosed, you'll find records of all the loans I've given them, none repaid, and a USB drive with recordings of 2 conversations where they discussed strategies to access my money before my death. I started recording after Beth's warning. I know this will be painful to hear. I've left the house to you not just because you cared for me, but because you love it for what it is, a home, not a financial asset. You understand its soul. If they become truly troublesome, contact Jackson Palmer at Palmer & Reed Law. His number is below. Jackson has been more than a lawyer to me. We found each other late in life, but he brought me great joy in my final years. He has copies of everything in this envelope, and instructions on how to proceed if necessary. I'm sorry to burden you with this. Know that you were the joy of my life, Annika. Whatever family you create with children or without will be blessed by your loving heart. All my love, Grandma Elise. I sat at her desk, surrounded by revelations, trying to process what I'd learned. My family hadn't just been cruel at my birthday, they'd been calculating and deceitful for years. Their financial problems explain their desperation, but not their cruelty about my infertility. The USB drive contained exactly what Grandma described. Audio recordings of my father and mother discussing her declining competence, and how to protect the assets before she gives everything to Annika. There was even a recording of Heather and Trent talking about their share of Grandma's house, calculating its value and how they would spend it. Most surprising was learning about Jackson Palmer. Grandma had never mentioned a romantic relationship. She'd been widowed for 20 years before her death, and we all assumed she'd remained alone. The thought of her finding companionship brought me a sudden, unexpected happiness amid all the painful revelations. I looked up Palmer & Reed Law on my phone. Jackson Palmer was a respected elder law attorney, specializing in estate planning and protection against financial exploitation of seniors. His office was just 30 minutes away. As the full picture emerged, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt remained, but now anger rose alongside it. Not a destructive rage, but a clarifying fire that burned away confusion and self-doubt. Grandma had trusted me not just with her home, but with the truth. She had anticipated this battle and armed me for it. I picked up my phone and made the quiet call that would change everything. Palmer & Reed Law. How may I direct your call? The receptionist's voice was pleasant and professional. I'd like to speak with Jackson Palmer, please. My name is Annika Thompson. I'm Elise Thompson's granddaughter. A pause. One moment, Miss Thompson. Minutes later, a warm, deep voice came on the line. Annika, this is Jackson Palmer. I've been wondering if I'd hear from you. You have? Your grandmother made me promise to wait for your call rather than approach you first. She wanted it to be your decision. I take it things have become difficult with your family? I gave him a brief overview of recent events, including the birthday party disaster. His response was a mixture of sympathy and controlled anger. Elise feared something like this might happen. I'm so sorry you've been subjected to this treatment. Are you free to come to my office tomorrow? There's quite a bit we should discuss in person. The following morning, I drove to a restored Victorian building in the historic district. Jackson Palmer was nothing like I expected. In his late 60s with kind eyes and a silver beard, he rose from behind his desk to greet me with genuine warmth. You look so much like her, he said softly. She had that same determined expression when she was working through a problem. You really knew her well, didn't you? His smile was bittersweet. We had 3 wonderful years together. Elise was an extraordinary woman, brilliant, funny, and fiercely protective of those she loved. Especially you. As we sat in his wood-paneled office, Jackson explained that Grandma had consulted him initially for standard estate planning, but their professional relationship had evolved into friendship and eventually more. She came to me after your father's first attempt to question her competence. We ensured her estate plan was absolutely bulletproof. She underwent comprehensive cognitive assessments and had 3 separate doctors certify her competence when she updated her will. Everything was videotaped and notarized. They said she was confused from medication, I said. Jackson shook his head. She made these arrangements months before her diagnosis. We updated everything after she became ill to ensure there could be no question of medication influence. Elise was methodical. He turned to his computer. Now, about your current situation. The behavior you've described, public humiliation, coordinated harassment, spreading damaging rumors to your workplace and community, constitutes defamation and emotional distress. The physical assault is a separate issue. I don't want to press charges against my father, I said quickly. I understand, but we need to address the broader campaign against you. He leaned forward. Annika, your grandmother anticipated something like this. She created a strategy that she hoped would never be needed. Over the next 2 hours, Jackson outlined Grandma's plan. She had created a secondary will clause that would only activate if her primary wishes were contested or if I experienced harassment from family over my inheritance. The clause established a charitable foundation for infertility research in my name, funded by additional assets I hadn't known about, investments and property worth approximately 3 times the value of the house. The foundation would be controlled by you, Jackson explained. The family would receive nothing. Elise hoped this would serve as a deterrent if they became difficult. She had that much money? I was stunned. They don't know about this, do they? No. Elise was very private about her finances. She lived modestly by choice, not necessity. She made some excellent investments over the years, and her late husband left her well provided for. We developed a strategy. First, gather evidence of their harassment campaign. Jackson had me forward emails, screenshots of social media posts, and recordings of voicemails. He particularly noted the document my parents had tried to pressure me into signing. This is an attempted fraudulent property transfer, he said, reviewing the paper they'd brought to dinner. Legally meaningless, but the attempt itself is significant. During the following week, I discovered more about my family's financial situation. Through public records, Jackson confirmed that my parents had indeed remortgaged their condo and taken a second home equity loan. He also found 3 tax liens against them. Most surprising was what we learned about Heather and Trent. Through a former colleague of Jackson's who specialized in bankruptcy law, we discovered Trent had consulted about filing for bankruptcy protection just months earlier. He had gambling debts exceeding $200,000 and had taken out high-interest loans to cover them. They're desperate, Jackson concluded. That explains their tactics, though it doesn't excuse them. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding my personal and professional life. I returned to work, explaining to Diane that my family was spreading falsehoods due to inheritance disputes. I showed her the certified copy of Grandma's will and competency evaluations. Seeing the documentation, she became supportive, assigning me to new clients whose events would keep me busy through the summer. Family drama makes for good gossip, she said pragmatically, but paperwork shuts it down. Taylor became my rock, staying with me several nights and accompanying me to therapy sessions. I'd started to process the family betrayal. Through her, I reconnected with our mutual friend Mark, who worked in architectural preservation. He came to assess some water damage in the library, but our conversations went far beyond home repairs. Mark had lost his mother young and been raised by a father who never recovered from the grief. "Your grandmother's house reminds me of my aunt's place," he told me as we had coffee in the garden. "It has that same feeling of safety, like the walls themselves care about you." Our friendship deepened as I shared my ongoing family conflict. Unlike others who seemed uncomfortable with my infertility, Mark spoke openly about his own childhood dream of adoption. "My dad was so caught up in what he'd lost that he couldn't see what he still had," he said. "I always thought if I became a parent, I'd want to give a home to a child who needed one, not just try to recreate what was lost." His perspective was healing in ways I hadn't expected. For the first time, I began to imagine a future family that didn't require biological children to be legitimate. 2 weeks after my initial meeting with Jackson, I received an email from my father. Subject line: Neighborhood Meeting. "Annika, the Neighborhood Association is meeting this Saturday to discuss the proposed rezoning of your grandmother's property for multifamily development. As you haven't responded to our previous communications, we're moving forward with alternative arrangements. If you wish to have input, attend the meeting at the community center at 10 a.m. I forwarded it to Jackson immediately. His response was swift. "Pure intimidation tactic. There's no rezoning application. I checked with the city planning office this morning as part of our due diligence. Also, your father has been attempting to contact your mortgage company. The bank called me, as I'm listed as your attorney of record." The realization of how far they were willing to go, spreading rumors to neighbors, attempting to interfere with my mortgage, was chilling. But instead of the despair I might have felt before, I felt a cold clarity. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about stopping people who were trying to bully and manipulate me out of what was legally mine. "I think it's time for that family meeting you mentioned," I told Jackson. "On our terms." Jackson agreed. "I'll contact them formally as your legal representative. We'll meet in my office where the environment can be controlled. I suggest we include their attorney, Gerald Stevens, correct? This should be completely above board." "What exactly are we offering them?" I asked. Jackson's expression was grave, but determined, not what they're expecting. "Your grandmother left very specific instructions about how to handle this situation. Are you prepared to follow her plan?" I thought about Grandma's journals, about the years of manipulation she'd endured, about their cruel words at my birthday party, and about their continuing attempts to intimidate me. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm ready." Jackson's conference room was designed to impress. Cherry wood table, leather chairs, law books lining the walls, and a discreet recording system. He had informed all parties would be active during our meeting. My parents arrived with Gerald Stevens and an expression of smug confidence that faltered slightly upon seeing the prestigious setting. Heather and Trent came separately, 10 minutes late, looking both defensive and expectant. "Thank you all for coming," Jackson began formally. "I'm Jackson Palmer, representing Annika Thompson in this matter concerning the estate of Elise Thompson." "We know who you are," my father interrupted. "Let's get to the point. We're here to negotiate a reasonable settlement regarding my mother's house." Jackson smiled thinly. "Actually, Mr. Thompson, you're here because Miss Thompson has graciously agreed to this meeting before proceeding with legal action against all parties present, excluding counsel." That got their attention. Gerald Stevens straightened. "Legal action? On what grounds?" Jackson nodded to his assistant, who distributed folders to everyone. These documents outline the basis for potential claims of defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment, assault and battery, and attempted fraudulent transfer of real property. As they flipped through the contents printouts of social media posts, transcripts of voicemails, copies of emails, statements from my neighbors and colleagues, the color drained from my father's face. These are private family communications being taken out of context, he blustered. Really? Jackson clicked a remote, and the large screen on the wall displayed Heather's social media post claiming I had manipulated a dying woman. This public statement, viewed by approximately 3,000 people, including Ms. Thompson's business clients, alleges elder abuse and fraud. It is demonstrably false and has caused measurable damage to Ms. Thompson's business clients, Thompson's professional reputation, and income. He clicked again. Now the screen showed a text message from my father to a neighbor. Preparing for demolition next spring. Better start looking for noise ordinances to enforce when the construction begins. This statement, representing that Ms. Thompson intends to sell the property for development, is also false and has caused community discord and damage to her standing in the neighborhood. With methodical precision, Jackson presented evidence of their campaign against me. The slap at my birthday party, witnessed by dozens. The attempted coercion with the fraudulent property transfer document. Trent's calls to my clients suggesting I was under investigation. My mother's comments to my mother's garden club that I was mentally unstable since the infertility diagnosis. Gerald Stevens looked increasingly uncomfortable. While these communications may have been ill-advised, they hardly constitute. I'm not finished, Jackson said calmly. Miss Thompson has been extremely patient with behavior that crosses both ethical and legal boundaries. That patience has limits. So this is a shakedown, my father said bitterly. Threaten us with lawsuits unless we stop asking questions about a suspicious inheritance. Jackson's expression didn't change, but his voice cooled, noticeably. There was nothing suspicious about Elise Thompson's estate planning. She consulted me initially 2 years before her illness, and we updated her documents regularly. She underwent cognitive assessment before each major decision. He clicked the remote again, and my grandmother appeared on screen. The video showed her sitting in this very office, alert and clear-eyed. This is my voluntary statement regarding my estate planning decisions, she said on the recording. I am of sound mind, not under duress, and these decisions represent my wishes. I have chosen to leave my primary residence to my granddaughter Annika Thompson, because she has demonstrated love and care for both me and the home itself. My son William and his wife Patricia have repeatedly expressed interest only in the property's financial value, suggesting sale or development on multiple occasions. She continued, explaining her reasoning with the sharp clarity I remembered so well. The timestamp showed this was recorded 6 months before her diagnosis. This is meaningless, my mother interrupted. Anyone can read a prepared statement. The 3 geriatric specialists who certified her competence would disagree, Jackson replied mildly. Their reports are in your folders. But let's address the central issue here. You believe Elise's estate should have been divided differently, with primary consideration given to Heather's children. Is that correct? It's a family home, Heather said. It should be for raising a family, which Annika can't do, my father added. I flinched despite my preparation for their cruelty. Jackson's hand moved slightly toward mine in a gesture of support before returning to the folder before him. Elise anticipated this argument, he said. She was quite aware of your views on family legacy, Mr. Thompson. She left instructions for this exact situation. He removed a sealed document from his briefcase, displaying the intact seal to Gerald Stevens before breaking it. This conditional clause in Elise Thompson's will activates only if her primary wishes are contested or if the beneficiary experiences harassment regarding the inheritance. Based on the evidence presented today, those conditions have been met. Jackson read from the document. In the event that my son William, his wife Patricia, my granddaughter Heather, or her husband Trent contest my will or engage in harassment of Annika regarding her inheritance, I direct that my secondary estate, consisting of investments and property held separately and not previously disclosed, valued at approximately $3,600,000, shall be used to establish the Elise Thompson Foundation for Infertility Research and Support under the sole directorship of Annika Thompson. The silence in the room was absolute. $3,600,000, almost triple the value of the house. My father's face had gone from red to white. "This is absurd," he finally managed. "My mother didn't have that kind of money." Jackson slid another document across the table. Elise's financial statements. "She lived modestly by choice, Mr. Thompson, not necessity. Her late husband's insurance policy, combined with prudent investments over 30 years, created substantial wealth that she chose not to flaunt." "You're bluffing," Heather said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The foundation paperwork has already been prepared," Jackson continued as if she hadn't spoken. "It requires only Annika's signature to file. The directive specifically excludes all other family members from benefit or involvement." Gerald Stevens was reviewing the documents with growing concern. "These appear to be in order," he told my father quietly. "There's more," Jackson said. "Elise established a separate trust fund for Heather's children's education, accessible when they turn 18. The trust currently holds $300,000, with a condition that its release is contingent upon respectful treatment of Annika by the children's parents. Given recent events, that condition has not been met," Heather gasped. "The kid's college money depends on how we treat her? That's manipulation from beyond the grave." "That's estate planning," Jackson corrected. "Elise wanted to provide for her great-grandchildren's education while ensuring family harmony. She believed these goals were connected." Trent, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "Can we see proof this trust actually exists?" In response, Jackson played one final recording. My grandmother's voice filled the room again, this time addressing Heather directly. "Heather, honey, I've always loved you, from the day you were born. I've watched you grow into a mother of 3 beautiful children, and nothing would make me happier than to help them have every educational opportunity. But I've also watched you grow bitter about what others have that you don't. I've seen how you and Trent focus on acquiring things rather than appreciating what you have. I've established this trust because I believe in your children's potential, but I've made its terms conditional because I believe in your potential too. You can be better than the jealousy that's consuming you. Treat your sister with the respect and love she deserves, and your children's future will be secured. The choice is yours." Tears streamed down my face as I heard Grandma's voice addressing these issues she'd never confronted directly in life. Across the table, I saw Heather's shock transform into something more complicated: anger, shame, and perhaps a glimmer of recognition. My father started to speak, but Gerald Stevens placed a restraining hand on his arm. "I recommend we take time to review these documents privately," the lawyer said carefully. "Perhaps we can reconvene after everyone has had opportunity to consider their positions." Jackson nodded. "That would be prudent. I should note that Miss Thompson has not authorized any legal filings to date. She hoped this meeting might lead to resolution without court involvement." As they gathered their folders, the fight seemed to have gone out of my family. My father looked suddenly older, shoulders slumped under the weight of revelations. My mother avoided looking at me entirely. Trent whispered urgently to Heather, whose expression had turned calculating as she processed the information about the trust fund. Before they left, I spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "I never wanted this conflict," I said quietly. "Grandma's house isn't just property to me. It's where I felt safe and loved when nowhere else felt like home. I'm not keeping it to spite you or to deprive Heather's children. I'm keeping it because Grandma entrusted it to me, and living there honors her memory." No one responded directly, but as they filed out, I saw uncertainty replace the righteous anger they had arrived with. They had come expecting to intimidate me into submission, and instead discovered that Grandma had anticipated their behavior and created consequences they never imagined. As the door closed behind them, Jackson turned to me. "Your grandmother would have been very proud of you today. You stood your ground with dignity, just as she knew you would. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension of months beginning to release. What happens now? Now, he said with gentle certainty, they recalculate. $3,600,000 is a powerful incentive to reconsider one's position. The question is whether they value their pride more than their financial interests. I thought about Grandma's hidden strength, the quiet power she had wielded, not through confrontation but through careful planning and unwavering principles. In her own way, she had taught me how to fight battles without becoming bitter or cruel. Whatever they decide, I said. I'm not afraid anymore. 3 months after the revelation meeting in Jackson's office, I stood in Grandma's garden. My garden now, without qualification or apology, watching butterflies dance among the late summer flowers. The tension that had knotted my shoulders for so long had finally begun to ease, replaced by a calm certainty I hadn't felt since before Grandma's death. The aftermath of that meeting had unfolded gradually. For 2 weeks, silence from my family. Then a formal letter from Gerald Stevens, indicating my parents wished to resolve family differences without legal proceedings, and requesting a cooling-off period for all parties. Jackson translated the legalese. They're backing down, but saving face. My father called a week later. Our conversation was stilted, awkward, but without the vicious edge that had characterized our recent interactions. I've been speaking with some colleagues, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. They expressed concerns about my behavior at your birthday. Professional concerns. I understood the subtext. Word of his public assault had spread through his architectural circles, damaging his reputation. Self-interest, not remorse, had prompted this quasi-apology. I hope we can move forward, he continued vaguely. Moving forward would require acknowledgement of what happened and why it was wrong, I replied. I'm open to that conversation when you're ready to have it honestly. He nodded uncomfortably and left. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a retreat from open hostility. Heather's transformation was more surprising. She appeared at my door unannounced one evening, looking uncharacteristically subdued. Can we talk? She asked, her usual confidence absent. Over tea at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd occasionally done homework together as children, she struggled to articulate thoughts that clearly didn't come naturally. I've been seeing someone, she finally said. A therapist. Trent and I both, actually. It was his idea. After. Everything. That's good, I said neutrally, waiting. She asked me when I started resenting you. Heather's fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. I couldn't even answer at first. It's been so long I can't remember not feeling it. But then we started talking about growing up, and how Mom and Dad were always working, and how Grandma would take you here but not me. She invited you, Heather. You said this place was boring, because it hurt that she clearly preferred you. The words burst out, decades of pain behind them. You were her favorite. Everyone knew it. And then you got to live with her. And then you got her house. And it just confirmed what I always knew: she loved you more. The raw honesty was startling. For the first time, I glimpsed how our shared childhood looked through her eyes. She didn't love me more, I said gently. She connected with me differently. You had Mom and Dad's attention and approval in ways I never did. They bragged about your grades, your popularity, your conventional success. When you married Trent and had the twins, Dad literally told me at least one daughter fulfilled her potential. Heather looked genuinely shocked. He said that to you? The world told me my worth depended on having children, and then my body couldn't do that one thing. Grandma was the only person who made me feel valuable anyway. Can you understand why this house means more to me than just real estate? Something shifted in Heather's expression, not complete understanding, but perhaps the beginning of it. The trust fund for the kids, she said, changing direction. Is it real? Yes. Jackson showed me the documentation. $300,000, divided equally among your 3 children for education. Available when they turn 18. Conditional on us treating you with respect. I know. She sighed. Trent's been a mess since the meeting. He finally admitted the gambling problem. It's worse than I knew. We're selling our house, moving to something smaller, starting over. I'm sorry about Trent, I said, meaning it despite everything. That must be really hard with the kids. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You know what's weird? The kids are fine with moving. They said they just want us to stop fighting and be happy. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. Before leaving, she hesitated at the door. I'm not ready to apologize for everything. Some of it still feels complicated. But what happened at your birthday was wrong. I knew it was wrong while it was happening, and I did it anyway. I'm sorry for that part, at least. It wasn't complete reconciliation, but it was a start. More importantly, it was honest. My mother remained distant, unable or unwilling to acknowledge her role. Some relationships, I was learning, couldn't be forced into healing before their time, perhaps never. Work stabilized as the family drama receded from public view. Diane assigned me to coordinate a major charity gala, signaling her renewed confidence. Nothing says trustworthy like handling a $500,000 donor event, she noted with pragmatic approval. Mark became a more frequent visitor, first under the pretense of helping with home repairs, then openly as someone whose company I enjoyed. Our friendship evolved gradually into something deeper, both of us cautious after past disappointments. He understood my complicated feelings about fertility without pitying or dismissing them. Family is who shows up, he said one evening, as we sat on the porch swing Grandma had installed decades earlier. It's not about DNA or who owns what. It's about who stays when things get hard. With Jackson's guidance, I established the Elise Thompson Memorial Fund, smaller than the foundation threatened in the conditional will clause, but meaningful nonetheless. Rather than focusing solely on infertility research, I directed it toward supporting both medical advancement and practical assistance for people building families through non-traditional means. Adoption, fostering, and assisted reproduction. The first grant went to a local organization, helping prospective adoptive parents navigate the complex legal and emotional landscape. Working with them, I began to reimagine my own path to parenthood, one not limited by biology. 6 months after the confrontation in Jackson's office, I hosted a small memorial gathering on what would have been Grandma's 80th birthday. Just close friends, a few neighbors who had genuinely cared for her, and Jackson, who brought photos I'd never seen of Grandma laughing on a harbor cruise, looking younger and more carefree than I remembered her. She wouldn't want us to be solemn, he said, raising a glass of her favorite sherry. Elise believed celebrations should have laughter. We were sharing stories in the garden when an unexpected car pulled into the driveway. Heather stepped out, then helped her 3 children from the back seat. She approached uncertainly. The children clustered around her. We were making a birthday cake for great-grandma, she explained awkwardly. The kids wanted to bring it here. I should have called first. The children held up a lopsided chocolate cake with too much frosting and uneven candles. We put 80 candles on it, announced her daughter proudly. Not quite 80, Heather corrected with a small smile. We stopped at 50 when the cake started disappearing under wax. I looked at my niece and nephews, really seeing them perhaps for the first time. They bore no responsibility for adult conflicts they couldn't understand. They had loved their great-grandmother, too. You're just in time for the stories, I said, stepping aside to welcome them in. Grandma would have loved that cake. Later, as twilight softened the garden and children's laughter echoed through the old house, Heather found me alone in the kitchen. This place feels different now, she said, looking around thoughtfully. It feels like a home again? I suggested. She nodded. I was so focused on what it was worth that I forgot what it was for. I have some news, I said, changing the subject. I've been approved as an adoptive parent, a 10-year-old girl named Lily. She's been in foster care for 3 years after losing both parents in a house fire. She moves in next month. Heather's surprise seemed genuine. You're going to be a mom? Annika, that's wonderful. Grandma always said this house deserved to have children in it again. I said, just not the way everyone expected. As the evening wound down and guests departed, I found myself alone in Grandma's study. My study now, soon to be shared with a daughter I hadn't met yet but already loved. On the desk sat the leather journal that had revealed so many secrets and ultimately saved my inheritance and my peace of mind. I opened to a blank page and began to write, continuing the tradition Grandma had begun, not focusing on conflicts or grievances, but documenting the small moments that made a life. The butterfly garden blooming again, Mark's quiet strength, the unexpected olive branch from Heather, the anticipation of Lily's arrival. The house around me settled with familiar creaks and sighs, no longer the center of a battle, but once again a sanctuary. Grandma had given me more than property. She'd given me the courage to define family on my own terms and to stand firm in the face of pressure and cruelty. Outside my window, fireflies began their evening dance in the garden. I thought about the girl who would soon look out this same window, a child who had lost everything finding a new beginning in a house that had weathered its own storms. I would tell her about her great-grandmother Elise, who understood that a home's true value isn't measured in dollars, but in the love it shelters and the memories it holds. Sometimes the most meaningful calls we make in life are the quiet ones, not shouted in anger but spoken with resolve. My call to Jackson had changed everything, not because it defeated my family, but because it forced truth into the open where healing could finally begin. My journey wasn't about winning a house. It was about finding my voice and the courage to use it, even when 99 people were watching. It was about recognizing that family is both the one we're born into and the one we create through love and choice. Most of all, it was about honoring Grandma's final gift by filling these old walls with new beginnings. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when it seemed like everyone was against you? What gave you the strength to make that difficult choice? Please share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the quietest calls lead to the most powerful changes. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope you find the courage to make your own quiet calls when needed.